This is the story of Jack Burrows. Perhaps Burrows, I don't know. I have never seen the spelling of his last name. If you think about it, there is no guarantee that this is his real name. Everything I will tell you is what I saw, heard, or was told. Other than what I have personally observed, there is no guarantee that any of this is true. However, no one has a reason to lie. Nobody gained anything from this. I met Jack about 7 years ago. One day he just walked into our little expat bar in the middle of nowhere in the Philippines. He was relatively young, he was about 40 at the time, but he stood out as the nicest and happiest guy in the place. Jack was a heavy drinker. He drank heavily as if it were a prize to be won. If anything, drinking made him even happier. He was always polite and generous with the bartender and waitresses. In the end, the stool in the corner became his reserved place. He held court from his corner. He entertained everyone with witty stories, jokes, and bar tricks. Anyone who had problems found him a sympathetic ear and a helping hand. I've lost count of how many people he's helped out of trouble. One call, and Jack flew in like Superman. Everyone loved Jack. Of course, everyone in the bar knew that one of the waitresses had a crush on him. Apparently, everyone except Jack. No matter how hard Eden tried, she just couldn't catch his eye. It wasn't that he wasn't nice to her. It was just that he never showed romantic interest. When he was drunk, he sometimes called her Jasmine and looked at her as if she were lighting up the stars. The next day, when he was sober, he denied it, but never took any action. I would describe Jack as a rather gentle giant, a big old teddy bear. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got 3'8" muscles. However, despite his size, I have only seen him angry once. The huge Australian refused to let go of Jack's favorite 40-kilogram waitress. I could literally see Jack's ears perk up like a lion spotting prey as she tried to get him to let her go. Then, when she screamed at the Australian that he was hurting her, Jack turned into a beast. The Australian easily surpassed Jack by 10 centimeters and at least 2 pounds, but did not even notice his approach. It was the fastest and most brutal beating I have ever personally witnessed. So much so that the Australian, when he came to his senses, had to ask who beat him. That's how Jack was. You could tell him and do anything to him, and he would just shrug it off. But as soon as you lay a finger on one of his friends, you immediately meet the beast. That wasn't all for Jack. I never stayed until closing, but from what I understand, every night after he passed out, the waitresses took turns escorting Jack's drunk ass to his closet-sized apartment. Everyone looked out for each other. The waitresses called him Kuya, which means big brother. This brings me to the events of last week. On Saturday, I walked into our favorite little bar on the beach and asked our dedicated bartender where Jack was. It wasn't like him to miss the evening. She pointed towards the beach. I found Jack sitting by the water's edge, drinking and watching the sunset. He looked depressed and I asked him what was the matter. "I'm T-Rid Billy," he replied. He never called me Bill, only Billy. "I'm tired of pretending it didn't happen. Pretend everything is fine. Pretend I'm not in pain," he said slowly in a southern accent. "But you are always happy," I objected to him. "You're the nicest guy in the bar." "It's all fake," he snorted. "I behave in such a way that people don't ask what's wrong with me. Nobody wants to listen to my complaints. I don't need anyone's sympathy, but the truth is that I'm hurting." I told him I would listen, and I was serious. I told him that I wanted to know his story, that I collect stories. At my age, that's all I have left. And he told me everything. Jack grew up in a foster family. I thought it was pretty shitty to be unwanted even by your own mother, but Jack never used that as an excuse. He told me about his high school sweetheart. They lived together for 9 years. He was young, but he truly loved it. One day, Jack came home and she announced that she had met another man. Of course, it broke his heart. Emotionally knocked out and bloodied, Jack somehow managed to get back on his feet. I have no doubt that it took a lot of energy from him. As a result of a repeat relationship, he found himself paired with an older woman. She couldn't get enough of Jack's youthful energy and cheerful disposition. Eventually, the flame died out, and they went their separate ways. Jack was sure she had left him before they broke up, but it didn't matter. She moved on anyway. Yes, it caused Jack terrible pain, but somehow he got back on his feet. He was persistent, to say the least. He blamed himself for both failures. Said he worked too hard, didn't put in enough effort, or wasn't there. It didn't matter. He said it was entirely his fault. I didn't believe it for a minute. It's typical of Jack to fall on someone else's dagger. He admitted that after this, he fell into a deep depression. And one day, completely by accident, he received a message from a woman completely different from those he had met before, from a Filipina named Jasmine. She was beautiful and sweet and seemed to adore Jack. "I did everything right this time, Billy," Jack told me with deep sadness. "I was next to her, never let her down, and he never held back." When Jack responded to her first message, Jasmine was 1 minute away from becoming homeless. Even though Jack barely knew her, he rushed to help. Yes, he was in love with this woman. I heard it in his voice. She became his happiness. He visited her in the Philippines 3 times before he decided to get her a visa. The same week she received it, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. If it weren't for Jack, she would have died. The Philippines does not have a social safety net. If you can't pay, you're just suffering. Instead, he stood by her side and provided her with the best treatment. Surgery, months of radiation, and other procedures. Jack paid for everything. And he didn't flinch. Total unwavering support, from start to finish. When she was weak, he carried her on his back. When she was tired, he massaged her sore spot so she could sleep. I would argue with anyone who said Jack didn't give her his all. When she finally got better, he brought her to the United States and married her. She was everything Jack had hoped for. Sweet, loving wife and tigress in the bedroom. Jack said her favorite word was yet. For example, "Can I have some more sex, please?" She tried everything Jack suggested and even came up with a few variations of her own. Life couldn't be better. Jack even wondered if she was seriously trying to kill him. Literally, love you to death. After 2.5 years of perfect harmony, Jasmine received a green card. Permanent residence. What Jack didn't know was that this was the magic ticket. She no longer needed him to stay in the U.S. "I remember that day so well," Jack recalled. "I came home and saw her boyfriend loading her things into his truck. She left me." There was a lot more interesting in this story, but Jack did not reveal everything. Some research online led me to suspect that she had an abortion and had another husband somewhere, but Jack never hinted at other bad things she was involved with in her past. I know it's cheesy, but it fits perfectly with the lyrics of a song I heard. "You called me strong, you called me weak, but I will still keep your secrets. You took for granted all the times I supported you. You tripped and hit your head. If it weren't for me, you would be dead. I lifted you up and helped you feel solid ground under your feet again." She literally owed Jack her life, but she discarded him like trash for something younger and brighter. Jack couldn't describe the pain he felt. He didn't need to. I saw it in his eyes. He was not just knocked down again, but truly broken. This time, he couldn't get up. I dug into it, to understand what happened. I thought maybe I could fix everything, he explained as hope left his voice. And I stopped searching after I found the 5th guy with whom she cheated on me. There was no point in going any further. I drowned my sorrows in a bottle, but after that I managed to work for another 4 years, he admitted. I was in a constant daze, completely numb. Most of the time, I didn't even know what day it was. He said there were a lot of signs that he either missaid or ignored. He felt like a fool. She played it like a symphony. I will never understand why she did this to him. A week before I arrived here, Jasmine texted me, Jack recalled sadly. After 4 long years, she wanted me back. She was probably dumped by her last boyfriend and thought I'd be stupid enough to take her back. I never responded to her SMS. I didn't want to ruin my memories. The Jasmine I remember is the sweet, loving girl I married, the one I loved. I didn't want to replace her with the woman Jasmine became. I took this as a sign that it was time for me to run here. The last words Jack spoke to me before I left him were that he came to this place 7 years ago because it was here that he first met Jasmine in the flesh. This was a special place for him, Alpha and Omega. I didn't know then that it meant the beginning and the end. I missed this hint. At his request, I left him there in the chair with his feet in the water. He said he was going to finish his bottle and go to bed. The next day, when the tide came in again, we found Jack's chair half buried in the sand. But there was no sign of Jack. He himself was not there. I just found out today that a week ago, Jack's doctor told him he was dying. The liver failed, the kidneys failed. The ocean may have taken his body, but he drank himself to death and died of a broken heart. So today we all raise a glass to Jack. I hope he finds his happiness again. This is the story of Jack Burrows, my friend. Subscribe to